How is it going, my fellow lore seekers? I just got off of work and I wanted to have just like a very quick discussion video. Like I said, I'm trying to pump some videos out, man. We're getting them out. I'm gonna be consistent as much as I can be, right? Yeah, so quick discussion video about this little guy right here. I don't know if the camera will show it good enough, but it's Bucky. We know the squirrel. We know the dude, right? It's causing some issues right now. The internet's going crazy over him, and people are calling for Bucky to be banned. They're calling for him to, if not be banned, be limited. And you know, I made a tweet here, actually before this whole fiasco, but I made a tweet here simply saying I personally believe there's not a single card in this game that should be banned or limited. It's just period. I don't think any card has reached that point. Now I understand why people feel that way about Bucky, right? We just had the recent the pack 10K tournament. Decided to join it last minute and I didn't do too bad, honestly. I was hoping to run into some blue steel. I don't even think I ran into a ruby sapphire mirror. I didn't the entire time. I was hoping to run into some blue steel, maybe some mirrors, and instead I didn't. Ran into some kind of like variety decks, and then 3 discard decks, one of which actually being the winner of the last pack tournament, the Rat. And you know, I think when he won, we saw and we already knew about the power of discard. We already knew Emerald Steel was strong. We knew it was good. But I think we kind of just were a little bit optimistic, saying like, okay, well, you know, that deck is a pain, but we're going into a new set. We're going into maybe a brighter future, even though we kind of seen some sprinkles there of Emerald Steel being maybe even stronger going into this new set. But, you know, like I said, I think we just kind of had hope that, you know, people are going to figure out the meta. People are going to figure out what to do here to deal with Emerald Steel. Deal with the absolute pain and feels bad that is discard, right? It's just a feels bad in any game that it's in. Nobody likes to lose their hand. Nobody likes to lose, especially in this game. I don't want to lose the things that I specifically mulliganed for, or I like having cards I can have in my hand that I know aren't going to be taken away immediately on turn 2, especially if you're on the draw. But we're here nonetheless, right? We have to deal with the discard because Ravensburger decided that's just what we're going to have to deal with. They did a little sprinkle in set 1. You know, we had Flynn Rider. Flynn was whatever, right? Flynn Rider was good, but, you know, we had to deal with Cusco. We had to deal with Cheshire Cat. Things that at the time were worse off because now I have to throw my good character into this annoying cat, and I have to lose it no matter what, even though the cat does absolutely no damage. I just have to take that trade. Same with Cusco. I just have to take that trade. And funny enough, Cusco actually has a part of the problem that I'm going to get to when it comes to Bucky, right? So this is all kind of leading into this good old squirrel here. And like I said, people want him banned. People want him limited. One of the two, right? And so we had the recent 10K. All the matches, like in the top 16, you know, shout out to Thea, shout out to the entire team of the pack, shout out all the casters, everybody that was a part of that production for just hosting another very, very awesome Pixelborn tournament. You know, rest in peace, Pixelborn, but it seems like we have a new version on the horizon. Pavel cannot be taken down. We cannot be taken down. And yeah, so shout out to all of them. The top 16, the entire cast was great, but funny enough, we were all enjoying ourselves. We were all having this final hoorah for this client that we fell in love with since the beginning of the game. And in some crazy scenario, everybody was rooting for Ruby Amethyst. Regardless, I think, whether the Ruby Amethyst matchup ended up being Ruby Sapphire or ended up being Emerald Steel, I think that people were going to be rooting for the Ruby Amethyst regardless, because we had these two juggernauts so far in the beginning of this meta that have kind of like made it feel as though, oh, we're going to be dealing with another two deck meta like set 2. Even though set 2 almost was like just a 1 deck meta, everybody's just fighting for B tier. But you know, so we're dealing with this finals, right? We're dealing with the match Emerald Steel versus Ruby Amethyst. Ruby Amethyst kind of backed into a corner where it now has to play an aggressive approach. It can't be hard control like set 1 and 2. And in set 3, you know, it kind of had to be put, like as time progressed by the end of set 2 and by set 3 was pushed into this tempo oriented deck. And now it's kind of like, has to be very early and very aggressive to kind of deal with the landscape that it's in now. And so we're seeing kind of this weird Ruby Amethyst underdog situation against Emerald Steel, which already is just this terrible matchup to begin with, right? It's a terrible matchup for Ruby Amethyst, regardless of whether or not they want to go fast. They want to take their time. It's just a bad matchup, especially the Bucky versions. Prince John is annoying, but if we're drawing as many cards as them, we're kind of keeping pace. We can get to the Be Prepared, blow their engine up, and hopefully progress from there. There's hope there, but Bucky kind of removes all of that hope. And unfortunately, the finals for the 10K ended up being this very just disappointing, I don't want to say mess, but it was just disappointing, right? You're sitting there and you're just watching a wet noodle get slapped around. It was painful, and I think, me personally, the moment Bucky and Prince John were introduced and I had to play against them for the first times and had to deal with them, because, you know, I got buddies of mine, my great man Mark loves playing discard. I had to deal with these cards a lot in locals, our local tournaments, whatever it may be. So I understood how difficult and ridiculous those cards were from the moment they were introduced, and I played against them from the beginning. So I've always been on the Bucky hate train, but I'm not on the part where I feel like he needs to just be thrown away, you know. But that live stream, that final match, I think is what has broken the straw, or maybe opened the eyes to a lot of people on why Bucky is a problem. I'm not going to lie and say that he is not, right? I'm not trying to root for Bucky. I don't think anybody besides evil people that just want to play discard simply to troll and bother the people they play with, you know, that's just discard, that's mill, those, you know, sacrifice. Those are those type of people. You know, I understand it, I get it. But I think it opened the eyes to why Bucky is a menace, why he is a problem. And of course that gets like a visceral reaction, right? So people are calling for him to be banned. And I think, and I understand why they say this, and this is, I think, the root problem of Bucky and how you can fix a situation like Bucky. So the root problem is a very fun keyword in this game, and that is ward, right? I don't think Bucky's ability is broken. I don't think his stats are a problem. I think him being inkable is not the problem. Literally nothing is a problem on Bucky besides the fact that he's got ward, right? That is the problem. I think they created this 1/1 squirrel and they felt, oh man, there's too many ways to get rid of this 1/1 squirrel. You know, let's give him ward, right? And I think they felt the same way about Prince John. They're like, they have just such weak stats. You know, they can't have this really strong ability while also having like very good stats, which is understandable to me. They're engine cards. But the problem with how strong their engine is that when you slap on a keyword like ward, you end up in a situation where you now immediately need to make efficient counterplay cards to counteract the fact that they have ward, right? They're very weak bodies, and we do have cards that can deal with them. But a lot of the ways that you have to deal with a card like Bucky is not very efficient, right? If we're looking at Ruby, literally the only way Ruby gets around ward is two ways, essentially, right? It's a Tremaine or the Tremaine effect action, the 4-cost one, the new one. I don't know why I can't remember the name of it. It's very good though. Or be prepared, right? And two of those, so two of the cards, the Tremaine action, require a very specific case, right? It requires Bucky to be the only thing there, or require Bucky to be so unvaluable to your opponent that they get rid of it, right? Which is two very hard scenarios to come across. And then the other is be prepared, which, unless you're playing Ruby Sapphire, where you can get to it faster. I mean, now we have Sisu, which I think is even better than Be Prepared in that matchup. So unless you're playing Ramp, if you're playing Ruby Amethyst and you have Be Prepared and that is your key answer to this engine, one, they're going to get so much value out of that engine before you even get to 7. And also, they're running Ursula, they're discarding you. They're taking away your resources. If you can even ink up to 7, you're lucky. But if all of those Be Prepareds aren't sniped out of your hand by the time you even get to play them, you know, God forbid you have one in your opening hand or you draw into one early, you essentially are just dead on arrival. If they drop a Bucky, you're just dead. You're dead in the water unless you're that far, unless you're just so far ahead, right? But if they get Bucky on curve, especially now with the multiple, you know, they have Aladdin, Shift Diablo, they have ways to trigger Bucky literally either the turn he's played or right after consistently. If they don't have that curve, you might have a chance. But the moment they hit that curve, you just immediately lost. And that's exactly what we saw in the finals. So Ruby is kind of just dead in the water. And I'm only going to touch bases on the removal colors, right? So Ruby and Steel. And then if we think about Steel, we have Avalanche. I mean, mid, right? I mean, maybe you tech in 1 or 2 now, but it's uninkable. Thankfully, it's not a song, so Ursula can't take it away, so that is a slight benefit of it. But you're probably just going to run 2. It could help, right? I definitely could see a scenario where it helps, but it just feels inefficient, and it feels like we're wasting space in our deck to play cards that are for one specific matchup and extremely just lackluster and in some cases just absolutely terrible, unplayable in other matchups. And it's a Steel uninkable. So unless you're playing, once again, Ramp, where you can quill it away, it's just going to be a dead card in your hand. You're playing a Tinkerbell effect without the awesome body and after effects that Tinkerbell has. Speaking of Tinkerbell, Tinkerbell is a answer to Bucky. It's not a terrible answer. It's something you could definitely ramp to, once again. I mean, blue just, you know, Sapphire just kind of carries with helping you get to the answers that you need. And that, to me, is a part of the problem. But yeah, you know, you can ramp to Tinkerbell. You could shift Tinkerbell. Will this cause people to play the small Tinkerbell? Once again, I think it's just another scenario, because we haven't seen small Tink played in Steel decks, and I don't even know how long. You know, most shift lines we see now is just Robin Hood, because Robin Hood is a great character, and I mean, you get it on 3. I mean, do we see little Tinkerbell teched in, right? Do we see, somebody's calling me, it's scam likely. good old healthcare people, you know how it is. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Do we see little Tinkerbell placed in decks now specifically for Bucky? I don't think so. I think it's just another case where you don't want to just waste space in your deck for one specific matchup, right? And so you have Grab Your Swords, and I think that's about it, right? I mean, you have the Trident, but similar to you know, Tremaine or whatever, is you have to bank on that your opponent feels like the Bucky is of little value to them for them to choose Bucky as the target, right? So all of the answers for Bucky are extremely inefficient, so we have no real counterplay to him. And that goes for, in my opinion, all characters with Ward. I think all the characters with Ward that are actually played, that are very relevant in the meta that we're in, I think them having Ward is pretty problematic because we don't have enough counterplay to it. I mean, if you look at something like a Cogsworth, who is extremely strong and very, very just straight up game winning in the mirror. Whoever gets a Cogsworth, 2 Cogsworth down, you essentially just win that matchup. It's whoever gets that down. I mean, now you're kind of like battling with the items and the Ariel, who also has Ward. But Ariel, I think she has 4 willpower, so it's a little bit easier, but not really. You're requiring 2 Grab Your Swords to get rid of a character simply because they have Ward, or I don't even know, like you have to play prolonged damage effects to even get rid of a Cogsworth because he has 5 health, so you can't even double Grab Your Swords him. The most efficient ways to even get rid of any of those characters is with a big Cinderella, and the problem with big Cinderella is, one, you're most likely never playing the small version to shift onto, but you're also like probably not going to put that many big Cinderellas in your deck, because in those higher cost slots you have something more meaningful like Tamatoa or the Ariel, or you just play Tinkerbell, right? So it's like we just have very inefficient counterplay. We have very just inefficient ways to deal with this specific keyword, right? And I also made another tweet which kind of segues into how I think we get away from the topic of banning and limited, especially when it comes to Bucky, right? And unfortunately, this isn't something that can just be immediately answered and addressed in like a week or two, right? It can't be answered or addressed before Chicago or Fort Worth, you know. So I made this tweet right here about how Namari, for example, is just an extremely, like, they just fumbled the bag on Namari. Namari has a great ability. You know, her ability Blades allowing you to essentially do the same ability that Cinderella, good lord, steel cards mixed up, jumbled in my head. But it gives you the Cinderella ability, or what is it called? Pick a Fight, the only Wreck-It Ralph card. Come on, guys, where's more Wreck-It Ralph? We need more Wreck-It Ralph. We can get to that another time, but you know, Pick a Fight ability. You know, these 3 cards that have this ability to deal with characters that are ready, which gets around Ward. Namari's design is I wouldn't even say half good. I would say she's so fumbled because she's only a quarter good. Like, they started in a good direction and then said, just slap something else on there. Like, why is Namari bodyguard? Why do you care that a bodyguard character has this ability? You usually don't want to actively throw them into anything. You want them to have as much health as possible and have your opponent take away their health, not you actively taking away their health. I mean, I guess maybe paired with Rapunzel, she's not bad, but then that's like still such a niche scenario. So one, bodyguard is just awkward. Why bodyguard? And then also her stat line. I can't see the tweet, so I'm just going off the top of my head, but I believe she's like she's a 2-4. Maybe. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, you see it right there, right? You see the stats. The stats don't even make sense. The stats are kind of bad. And I think it's literally only those stats because she has bodyguard, which is just weird, right? Like, the stats are kind of weak, similar to how I personally feel about Super Goof, but Super Goof has like a very, very good ability, and he's inkable. So I kind of understand the Super Goof stat line. I think they have the same. Once again, I can't see the tweet. Editing puts it right here, the magic of editing. So her stats are weird. She's uninkable, which would be fine if instead of bodyguard, she had rush, right? Honestly, like the tweet said, I believe she should have been a 3-cost uninkable. Keep the stat line, right? Or maybe shave off a health. Make her a 2-3. Give her Blades ability, and instead of bodyguard, give her rush. Boom. Now we have one way, one card, and this is not how you solve this meta. This isn't how you solve the Bucky problem, but it is a step into the right direction, right? It is the right, it's starting to lean into the right way to go. By having a character like that, a 3-cost, uninkable, why not? It's a tech card. You maybe run 2 of it, like 2 of her, right? Uninkable, 3-cost, 2-3, with the Blades ability. She can attack, she can challenge ready characters, and give a rush. Now, your opponent playing Bucky, your opponent playing discard, may be able to get one of his triggers off if they're going first. Technically, they can get one off it either way if they do the Diablo shift line, but having one trigger go off is way worse than him just sitting there and hurting your brain, hurting your soul the entire match until you can hopefully spontaneously get your way to the removal needed to get to him, and by that point you've already lost, most likely. But with a card like that, you're making those Emerald Steel players, you're making the Bucky players have to now respect the fact that a card like that exists. It's not a super powerful card. Like, a 2-3 stat line isn't busted. Most of the time it might run into stuff and just die. You're just using it to get in there, maybe get something out after you did a grab your swords or whatever, something to finish off the last little bit of health on something, you know. You're using 3 ink to do so. So a 2-3 is not mind-blowing, but it is something that gets rid of a Prince John. It is something that gets rid of a Bucky. If you're playing Amethyst Steel, for example, you pair it with the crab, it can get rid of the aerial, it can get rid of the Cogsworth. And now the ward players, characters with ward, are still extremely strong because it's requiring to get rid of them before they get tons of value. You know, you have to play a tech card, but the tech card is actually playable and can be used in different small scenarios throughout multiple matchups, throughout different matchups. And running a 2 of a card like that would be way less painful than having to run 2 avalanches, right? Like, who wants to run avalanche? It's too niche. It's way too niche, right? And also it's just a 4 uninkable. Good lord. But you know, by adding characters like that and using the Pick a Fight, the Namari, the Cinderella ability as a way to counteract the power of ward. Now, this is just one example. I'm sure we could sit down, brainstorm, and I would love for you guys to comment and actually kind of come up with your own answers similar to that. Like, how do we get around ward? How do we counterplay ward in a way that seems fair and doesn't seem like it just absolutely just straight up negates those cards? Like, I don't think a Namari like that would negate Bucky or negate Prince John. I think it's just something that can answer to it, similar to how in set 1 a hyper aggro player would go turn 1 Lilo, turn 2 Simba, and if you're accustomed to the game and were around during that time, you know exactly what I'm going to say next. On your turn, Simba's exerted, they quested with the Lilo. They're banking on the fact that you don't have what we all know you have, which is the turn 3 Rafiki to take out that Simba, and now your 1-drop or your 2-drop can take out the Lilo, right? But the thing is, if you didn't have that turn 3 Rafiki, they were getting value. And that is my point, is we need cards that can put your opponent in a situation where it's like, well, you either have it or you don't. If you don't have it, I'm going to get a lot of value. I'm going to be very well off. But if you do have it, then like, hey, I didn't respect it enough. Or like, I have to respect the fact that you have it. Like, all right, cool, you had it. I had my engine, you had your answer. It is what it is. Like we you know, that's what it was. And you know, originally I had the idea like this, you know, the original tweet I had where I was saying, you know, how do you fix Bucky? You take away the ward. Some people, you know, kind of countered with that of saying, oh, well, Bucky doesn't have ward. He's just straight up unplayable because he's so easy to get rid of. And like, yes, I can agree to that to some extent. But at the same time, like, Diablo's not hard to get rid of. He's a 2/2 body. Granted, he has evasive, which is always annoying to deal with. But we have tons of cards to answer that. And those cards like Boom, Fire the Cannons, Brawl, Medusa, you know, whatever it may be, those cards can apply and help you in other micro situations besides just Diablo, even though it's mainly in there for Diablo. Whereas a lot of the answers to something like Bucky are not really good, like in different scenarios within the match. It's only good for Bucky, and giving that much value, giving that much, I don't even know, like giving that much to a card like Bucky is a disservice to the game. And I think just an underlying you know, issue of bad design. I'm not a game designer. I have not designed a game. I have designed a game before, but it was nothing big. It was just like a little flash game. But I just think it is just in, you know, I think just a general sense, bad design. Anyways, I rambled a lot. First person to say Bucky 3 times in the comments, I'll message you. Just tell me your Twitter as well in the comment, and I will send you this promo Bucky, because why not? I like giving things away. And speaking of giving things away, I also have this other giveaway going on right now until the end of the week, where I'm giving away an entire deck. It is a combination of the deck I played in Atlanta, as well as Arbox's recent list that he used during the 10K. It's kind of like a little amalgamation of the two. I sold all my tragic heroes, so that's why it's not in the list, or I would have, like a madman, put that in there as well. But I think it's just awesome value. It's, you know, a pretty cool giveaway, especially if it falls into the hands of somebody that hasn't been able to play Lorcana or hasn't really been able to deep dive into Lorcana. Now they have something else they can jump start off of. But if it goes into the hands of somebody that actively plays the game already, that's still cool with me, right? So yeah, so check that giveaway out. Also, like I said, comment Bucky 3 times in the comments with your Twitter handle or your Instagram handle, either or. Just let me know, and I'll randomly choose one of you guys, and I'll send that Bucky out to you. But anyways, like I do all the time, I've rambled enough. I'm gonna get out of here. My bad. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. Follow me on X. I guess subscribe, like this video, and yeah, I'll see you guys on the next. The next time I decide to have a discussion. All right, peace out.